guys, thank you for joining us today. I'm going to be running through some information and some background on identity management and some of the challenges we see organisations facing around identity, especially as software as a service applications start to be deployed. What we'll do, if you see in the panel there's an option to ask some questions. Any questions that come up during your presentation, please put them into the questions window there, and we'll pick those up at the end. Usually find it works better just to go through those at the end and make sure that we cover everything off. So without further ado, I'll start things off. So who are the people you're going to be listening to today? So I'm a product manager at NTT. Identity is one of our products in my portfolio. It's something I've been working with over the last 12 to 18 months to bring to market and to help our customers understand that some of the concepts around identity. I also have in the room Trevor Iverack, who's a solution solution director at CA, who's our partner, been working with us to bring this technology to the market. And you'll hear from him as the presentation goes on. So what we'll be trying to cover today is firstly just to give you some context around identity, understanding the challenges that we see, hopefully that you see as well, or if you disagree, then please feel free to bring that up in the questions. Talking about the idea of managing identity across multiple cloud-based services for your internal on-premise identity requirements. Talking about how we can extend that identity management into external user communities, situations where you're having to bring people who aren't traditionally part of your organization, your customers, your partners, into your organization, and how you can do that securely. And finally, why we think a software as a service model makes sense for identity management. So part of the reason that we're investing in this as a product, and we think it's important to be talking about this, is we think that identity has never been more important to an organization. We're finding organizations are consuming services from different places. I don't think I need to explain to the audience the changes that the cloud has made to the IT operations for a lot of businesses. People are now consuming core services, CRM, communicator, all those sort of services from software as a service platforms. And that has meant that a lot of identity matters have moved outside of the organizational boundaries. So, for example, you'll have a login for Salesforce, you'll have a login for Office 365. And these are systems that contain critical data, but where the identity is no longer being managed inside the organization. And we think this can lead to challenges with high administrative burden and poor user experience. Think about when you start an organization, how long does it take you to get all your passwords? How long does it take you to actually become able to do your job? And those kind of costs, frustrating for individuals, but also add up really substantially for organizations. At the same time, we have users coming from outside the organization. All of us have to work more closely in a more integrated fashion with the partner organizations that we've chosen to work with. All of our customers are demanding more and more information and more access into our systems. We think those are some of the challenges that are around identity at the moment, but we also think there's an upside to that. And I'd like to pass over to Trevor to talk through the idea of the application economy and some of the the upsides that we see from extending identity outside your organisation.
Thanks, Gareth, and good morning or good afternoon, and welcome from wherever you are joining us around the world. Thanks for joining us on the podcast. What I'd like to do now is just set the scene in regards to, as you can see, the slide titled Application Economy, and some of the things as you read through this slide, you'll see we're talking about technology disruptors that are all creating this perfect storm at the moment. And certainly cloud has been around, and in technology years it's been around for a long time, but we're seeing obviously the mobility and the ability to deliver services to mobile apps really starting to change the landscape of businesses. And that's what we mean by the application economy, and that's why CA and NTT have got together to bring to market identity and access management services consumed from the cloud. Now, the best way to, I guess, give you an example of this application economy is a personal story in regards to about 3 or 4 weeks ago. We're out in Hawthorne at a customer meeting. Now, for those of you who don't know where Hawthorne is, it's about 200 km out of the Melbourne CBD CBD, not easy to get a taxi. So we finished the meeting and we needed to secure a taxi, and my colleague mentioned that you use GoCatch. GoCatch is an app that is a taxi I guess, security service, and so I proceeded to download the GoCatch application, and I then used, once I downloaded that app, I used my social sign-in credentials, my Twitter account, to get registered quickly to that app, and a map came up, and I was able to secure a taxi, and within 6 minutes of downloading that app, I was in a taxi and on my way back to the office, which is an absolute dream consumer experience. You know, I talked to the taxi driver about his experience with GoCatch, and he's quickly found out that he can use it for competitive edge against all the other thousands of taxis in the CBD by spending his time in particular areas where he knows people use that particular app and gain a good fare. I asked him about what his company thought of it. They were very happy with anything that helps them. In essence, he was saying that they've upgraded their old antiquated system to this new app-based, internet-based system that allows them to deliver services more efficiently and better services. So that's, I guess that example really typifies the application economy. So what does it mean to you, in your organisation? So you may be in an industry where these disruptors are affecting the services that you bring, which means that you need to bring these particular applications or services to your consumers quicker, more efficiently, more securely, to be able to compete with these type of competitors. If you're not in that industry, what it's doing is it has created a culture of employees or your customers, citizens and consumers, where they want information quickly and efficiently and access to services that you provide from your organisation from their mobile devices from anywhere, anytime, and so forth. So what does this mean? What's the whole point? Well, look, as you read this slide, it says the application economy requires identity-centric security, and that's really our core message. If you're going to deliver these new services to any different, all these different platforms, then there is a security perspective as well as an enablement perspective. And at the core of this is the identity. So if we're able to identify that person, the right person accessing the right information from the right device anytime, we will go a long way to reducing the risk around that particular transaction. But also from an enablement point of view, their identity's been trusted somewhere else. In my example, I use Twitter. So being able to use that information to efficiently register them to a service or change that service or authenticate them to that service is something that organisations are really embracing, whether it's on-premise applications or in their cloud.
Thanks, Trevor. So just to pick up where we think people are actually at today with this, we're talking about some of the challenges that we see and some of the opportunities. So where are most organisations that we see out? And again, if anyone disagrees with any of this, please feel free to flag that in the questions, and we'll happily have a look at that. So we're seeing some organisations start to deploy Active Directory Federation services. So this is a specific Microsoft technology, but just to characterise it, we've seen some organisations start to deploy these sort of bilateral identity management systems where you have your on-premise identity management and it talks to another endpoint where that identity can be used. So ADFS most commonly is used in the case of Office 365 to give single sign-on across those platforms and single identity management. We've seen single sign-on technologies start to get pretty widely deployed where obviously your employees or your customers don't have to log on to your website or your internal systems multiple times. But there's not much standardization there, and they're often, the single sign-on technologies are not all that closely tied in, especially when you're talking about customer-facing single sign-on, not that closely tied into the customer databases, into the marketing functions of the organisation. Finally, so authentication systems. fairly common now for two-factor authentication systems, either soft tokens or physical tokens to be deployed. And mobile device management systems have been picking up. We have more and more, I guess, marketplace presence over the last couple of years. But again, most of those technologies we see as being fairly siloed off from each other. We don't know many customers who've tied their mobile device management system into their single sign-on, for example. So we think, again, we're not talking about brand new concepts necessarily for everyone, but we think that there is an opportunity to unify some of these efforts that are being made in different parts of the organisation. So just to focus, I guess, first on the internal uses of an identity management platform. As I've already discussed, there's services being consumed inside your organisation that are outsourced to software as a service providers, Salesforce, Gmail, all those other users. There's the traditional IT, I guess, infrastructure stacks, although fewer and fewer of those. So the SAPs, the Oracles, the Microsoft, technology stacks that get deployed inside the company still. There's also commoditized IT, which is all the people using Dropbox, the people using Skype, all the IT applications which have become critical to your business without you knowing about it. And obviously the users of these are all vastly different. Any organisation that's gone through an outsourcing process now has staff that effectively live outside their organisation but who are critical to the functioning of their organisation. Corporate users, obviously, we all still have employees, but they also want access to these platforms in different ways, and they want it via their smartphones, via their laptops. Speaking personally, there's not too many companies I want to work for. I didn't have the opportunity to work from home anymore. It's become part of the expectation that you'll have access to these services from anywhere. And as we'll talk about further along, there's also customers who now expect access, not necessarily to the services themselves. Not too many customers would expect access to their provider Salesforce, but they will want access to the information that's being held there and exposed to them in a comprehensible manner. So what we think this means that there's not really a meaningful concept of a network perimeter anymore. You have customers and partners, mobile employees who are always going to be outside of your corporate firewall. You have applications which are outside your corporate firewall. You still have obviously a corporate firewall, which is separating your internal employees and some of your enterprise applications from these services. But any of these sets of users or sets of services have good business reasons why they might need to communicate with each other. So what we'd like to propose is that an identity system should be the new perimeter for your organisation. It doesn't make sense to think in terms of firewalls and just hard security barriers anymore. You need to move up a level and start looking at identity as the perimeter for your organisation. That lets all the different users using all the different technologies, mobiles, browser applications, whatever other future access methods come along, which I've just got there as a thing, access the information that they need, no matter where it's hosted. And so this requires a bit of a mind shift in terms of security, and it requires a trusted platform if you're going to be no longer thinking about your perimeter, the perimeter of your organisation as being a device anymore. So what we think is a solution for that is to move us to an identity as a service model. So moving away from some of the challenges I've outlined previously, to a system where there's a single identity as a service hub, which acts as the broker, as the central point for access to your systems, be it from customers, be it from your partner organizations, and be it to software as a service apps, or even as we'll talk about soon, the dedicated customer applications which you've made available to them. What this lets you do is ultimately manage identity lifecycle inside your company. So if it's taking the example of an employee, creating a password, creating user accounts with strong passwords, making changes as necessary. People move, people leave, people change jobs, people change offices. Letting those changes be processed quickly and efficiently. when it comes time for that person no longer to have those access, i.e. they retire, they leave, they change role, making sure those permissions get retired efficiently. And from a single point. Again, I think anyone who's worked in a large organization who's found a lot of their passwords still working 2 weeks after they left the company, it's really not a good place to be as an organization. And something that we find a lot of our customers have good termination procedures in terms of, the HR parts of an employee leaving the organization, but they're surprisingly poor at making sure that those employees no longer have access to their Salesforce, for example. They're almost entirely, based on what we've seen, they're really, really poor at cutting off access to their, say, partner portals, for example. So if you work at a company who works with a partner who has their own usernames and passwords for that partner portal, you can bet that most companies won't cut off those partner portal accounts when an employee leaves, because they're not under the control of the IT team. And so it's really important to start thinking about, okay, well, how do I, if I'm going to use identity as the, the perimeter for my organization, how do I manage it efficiently? How do I make sure that people are, being created, managed and enabled, and allowed to exit that identity platform securely? So what we're, I guess, have come up with to look at that is built on the CA Secure Cloud. So this is a platform that gives identity management, advanced authentication, and federated single sign-on services. Most importantly, it integrates out of the box with most of the software as a service applications, which we found that our partners are using. Office 365 is the obvious one, Salesforce, and all those common software as a service platforms. For those special line of business apps, which most organizations have some particular line of business app that's just irreplaceable and will always need to be part of their business, we use common standards like SAML to provide identity services, all built on open standards so that we can quickly deploy identity management services for new software as a service applications. Equally tying into the on-premise identity sources which are inside your business. So Active Directory, we're not coming in to try to replace your AD or anything like that. The idea is to take those existing sources of truth and interact with them, and still rely on them as a source of truth, but moving into a cloud-based identity service is the ultimate source of who should have access to what. So as I said, making sure we can integrate with everything you've got, providing user-based portal access so that customers can appropriately delegate permission to create users, delete users to people inside their organization, not just having to put a ticket into the queue, but actually having self-service portals that the business operators manage their identity for their employees or as part of their HR function. So we'd like to speak to a case study now, so I'll hand back over to Trevor.
This case study is the first of 2 case studies that I want to talk about in regards to organisations consuming these identity and access management services from the cloud. Now, the first example is based on a global oil and gas corporation. There are around 50,000 employees that are scattered around the world based on different geographies, some remote geographies where they need access to applications and services to do their job. They also have a big consumer population that they need to manage around. They offer fly-by type services to their customers, mainly in Europe and the US. Need to manage their identity lifecycle from the day they begin as a consumer to the day they end. So what I want to do is just talk through some of the challenges that they had, what we introduced in regards to capability, and there's a few slides that talk conceptually to what we did. So from a challenge point of view, they're really their number one challenge, and these guys were what you class early adopters in consuming identity services from the cloud. They began their journey with advanced authentication or strong authentication many years ago, and then moved into consuming single sign-on, and then ultimately identity management services from the cloud. And they were really challenged from a point of view of their employees, those 50,000 employees that were in different locations, accessing the network from different SaaS applications. So they needed to provide access to those SaaS applications, but also do that in an efficient and transparent manner. That was certainly they really needed to, they offer, as you'll see in the next slide, a number of services through their partners, flyby type service, and which means that their partners need to access their systems and vice versa. That was a real challenge for them in regards to costs. So we're talking hundreds of different applications. And they wanted to be able to onboard these new partners and offer these new services. In terms of components, what did we introduce? We introduced the CA Secure Cloud platform and all components. Today we offer the advanced authentication capability from the cloud. We offer the single sign-on capability as well as the identity management. They embraced and consumed all of those particular capabilities. You know, some of the key factors that really drove them was the fact that they needed, they're not very technology literate in regards to, they don't have a depth of security people like a banking and finance type sector, and the skills and that breadth of skills across the world because they have so many different locations. So they really wanted one platform to be able to manage both user populations, employees, and be able to do that from one location, but still provide that. They wanted to streamline that capability in terms of key factors for the consumer, given the self-registration user identities such as social logon that they've already been trusted, such as Twitter or Facebook, if appropriate, but to give them access to services. That's very important in this application economy. I'll come back to the benefits, but let me just talk conceptually about what we did here. So, first component, there are three things that we're focused on: federated single sign-on, to SaaS applications. So they have, as I said, very much a big adopter of SaaS applications. What they need to do is give their employees the ability to access those SaaS applications. And what they introduced was, in essence, an experience where the employee will log on to the network, wherever they may be, from whatever device. They'll be presented with an intranet page and the applications that are associated to their role. And once they select one of those applications, using open standards such as SAML, they're able to get single sign-on to those particular SaaS-based applications. That was a big driver for them, one of the core drivers in their business case. As I said, they needed to open their systems up and act as a service provider for their many, many partners who need to access their systems, help offer services to those type consumers. So they were able to do that and make that an efficient and pleasant experience for their partners to be able to access systems, transact, and manage their aspect of those services. The last component was for their customers and being able to provide that and that slide is certainly one of the things that actually I just talked to the wrong slide, but there's a single sign-on slide that I just talked to. So I'm jumping back to the registration. One of the things that they needed to do was, as I said, using social logins and information that they had on consumer already, be able to register them to the many different services and back ends, their web portal or the application app that they were coming into the organisation through, able to do that and provide those services. You know, when we don't talk about it much, but self-service such as password resets is costing them quite a bit of money and people to change passwords because they didn't have an last aspect that I want to talk about was strong authentication. So they had sensitive applications. This is really about the employee community, and they needed a higher level of assurance around people, their access to these particular applications and data. So, and be able to make a decision that this person is not on the network at the moment, they're in a country or they're in a location that may be risky or untrusted, so we're going to that step up level of authentication. That was done by one-time password that was sent to their mobile phone. Again, something that from the one platform and the services of that platform. In terms of benefits, if I jump back to the benefits, certainly, having that one platform from a cost point of view around resources, having that consumed as a service, they don't need to worry about the infrastructure or upgrades. Really one platform, they're administrating that platform. Most of the ordering and feeding of that platform is done by the service provider. What they're able to do now is they bring more to their consumers. They're able to add that to their web platform, create the systems and access and quickly. So that it's pretty well understood and very efficient. They're able to, probably the biggest benefit that they got was the employees having a application gateway that gives them single sign-on to particular applications, and they only set the applications based on their role. The social login enablement was just to make that registration process more efficient. That's the first example in terms of global oil and gas.
Thanks, Trevor. So I'd like to pick up now some of the concepts around external user communities. We think there's a lot of opportunities to solve organisational challenges by moving identity management inside the organisation. We also think equally there's a lot of opportunities to be discovered by moving identity management services to include your customers as well, and potentially to include your partner organisations. Ultimately, why do we want to expose identity to the rest of the world? Why is this even something that we should entertain? So just to step back and look at this, we think having identity as a service that's the right people, I've said people here, not users, so we are talking about customers, we're talking about people who are not necessarily traditionally part of your organisation, to securely access applications, and this is through APIs or data feeds that you make available to them to process data, basically to do intelligent things with the data inside your organisation. So we'll speak to an example of that further through the case study, but another good example would be an organisation like Ticketmaster. So Ticketmaster has created a secondary market for event tickets. So basically, what the services that are currently provided by scalpers, they're seeking to provide by letting people sell tickets to events to and from each other. So this requires them to give access to their database of what events are coming up, how many tickets have been sold, how many tickets are still available. It requires them to sort of act as a, escrow service, like a broker service, providing the financial backing for the transactions that are occurring, and also obviously to allow users to create and delete accounts and transfer assets between them. So they've had to expose organisational data that they consider pretty important in order to be able to provide this service, which lets them, again, extend their business into the users of them and the customers of their business. Another great example of a business that's always being challenged to provide access to their services is banking. People want mobile banking, they want online banking, they want in-person banking still, and all of these systems have to be tied together with a common view, obviously, of the customer. Sometimes, they don't even want, they want services the bank can provide, but not to be, not directly to them. So the Verified by Visa program is a great example. A great example of identity management, actually. So Verified by Visa, if you buy things on the internet, and it triggers, I guess, a certain pattern in terms of if you're buying things from an online store you haven't purchased before, or from a store that's located in a geography, be it physical or network, that is associated with fraud. Your bank comes into the loop of that transaction to verify that yes, this person is the person who should be using this credit card. So actually providing value through the identities that they can speak to, can offer guarantees about. And you can only do that by having an identity management service that lets you take the identity information that you have and present it to the outside world. Equally, the various other customer service sort of style interactions here, the automated tellers and the live online chats, all require a common view of who your customers are and letting you do intelligent things with the data that those customers have entrusted to you. So we'd like to move on to another case study. I really think the external uses for identity management are best illustrated through examples, and this one in particular. So I'll hand back over to Trevor.
Thanks, Gareth. And this is a great example of the application economy. I really enjoyed talking about this. I really enjoyed the story and what they did from a business and a technology point of view. And what you're looking at here is someone who is at a metro station in Seoul who is ordering their groceries to be delivered later on in the day to their home. So a bit of context around the story. So Tesco is the organisation. They were the UK's largest retailer back in 2011, and sales started to slump in regards to their online presence and online transactions. That happened in particular in Asia, where sales accounts for around 30% of their overall sales. Now, what they did is run an experiment, and the experiment is they ran that in South Korea in regards to, they understand the culture in South Korea. They're one of the countries that work the longest hours in the world, and they've got executives that are upwardly mobile, and they're very busy, and they're too busy to shop. And so what they did is they introduced these virtual stores. They put them at bus stops, and they put them at metro stations. And essentially, it's just a display of all the groceries that you'd walk in into a grocery store with a QR code beneath each of the particular items. And what that person's doing is using an app. They authenticate to that app, and then they scan codes, in quantities, and place their order and put in a time around that, which is all done through an application. And obviously talking to the back-end systems from a Tesco point of view. This had a revolutionary effect on their business, which I'll talk to in terms of benefit. But let me delve into some of the finer details in regards to the challenges. So really, probably a core challenge, in addition to the challenges around their business or as an effect of the challenges around their business, was the fact that their online shopping experience was terrible. And they had a lot of partners in the same sense as the previous case that we talked about. They offered something like 43 online services, but they weren't unified. They had one customer, but that customer had so many different personas and identities, and they had to replay those credentials every time they accessed different services, which is a real challenge, and it obviously isn't a very good consumer experience by their web channel. They had a number of different solutions managing all of these different aspects. They didn't have one platform. A very siloed approach from a security and a user management point of view. So what we did was establish in a similar vein, the CA Secure Cloud function model around single sign-on, around identity management, and around advanced authentication. We also introduced the API management capabilities. So that really was giving Tesco the ability to expose business information and capability by an API layer to their mobile channel, which is their mobile application. Some of the key factors, that really drove this project and drove them to provide a better user experience was the fact that I mentioned that they had 43 online services. They would provide we implemented and introduced this one platform, this idea of one identity, and been able to really improve that user experience, whichever channel they chose to transact with, web channel or, an example of the mobile. That provided the core in regards to the back end around their service providers and them being able to provide better experience, transact and fulfill around the world. In terms of the benefits, you know, the most extreme benefit that they got out of implementing this platform is that they had a single identity service for the customers able to come in, be identified by the web or the mobile channel, and there was the personalisation. There wasn't any replaying of credentials, whether they jumped from different online stores, different contexts, depending on who they were and what they were wanting to do with purchase. From a Tesco point of view, you know, the amount of money they saved in regards to having this consolidated identity and access management platform as opposed to four access management platforms was extremely significant. You know, equal costs as well as efficiency costs. And you know, it allowed them to bring new services and deliver new services via any channel. And a lot of organisations today now have a mobile first approach and strategy, so they want to deliver services to their mobile app to the consumers first before they even do that via the web channel, which is, you know, an interesting shift in the last 12 months. And this has ultimately driven a better user consumer experience, and you know, this happened back in 2011. Took about 12 to 18 months to implement in terms of the full process, the full platform, the capability, and they've turned their sales around into, you know, the number one retailer in the UK again, as well as very significant especially in countries like. So that's an example of a great example of the application economy and how an organisation uses the cloud-based management consumption model.
Thanks, Trevor. And so we'd like to, I guess, finish things up by talking about why we think a software as a service model makes sense for identity management. And look, I think you all be glad to hear. Well, I'm not going to spend 5 minutes or even 10 minutes explaining why software as a service is a good idea. You know, we're all here talking about identity management because we've already embraced software as a service quite often. Specifically for identity, though, why do we think it makes sense? First of all, as we said, you know, earlier in this slide, the idea of, you know, perimeter, the idea of the organisational boundaries that are going to be supplied this platform, we think, you know, lends this to being an internet hosted service. Most of the software as a service applications that you're going to be consuming are already based on the internet. You know, increasingly more and more of them are going to be moving that way as well. So we think it makes sense to sort of take a cloud-first, internet-first approach to hosting these services. Obviously, as I said, we also get the flexibility of various different services all being provided, tied up in a single per user per month charge. So the full breadth of services that we've been talking about today, including the identity management platforms, the authentication platforms, including all the software tokens, all the other little bits and pieces that sometimes you can find yourself having to pay for additionally. All the investment in standard-based federation services, the SAMLs, the OpenIDs, the OAuths, the various different platforms that you can integrate with. It also lets you, again, put these tools in the hands of your users, giving them access to the self-service portals, giving them access to the tools they need to manage identity inside your organization. As I said, we think it makes sense that these applications are increasingly on the internet, especially more importantly than the applications, your partners and customers are going to be accessing these tools via the internet as well. So I think it makes sense to look at again an internet first model. So obviously there are benefits with a cloud type model, which I won't labour, but generally speaking, it means that we can lower the costs of implementing a product like this, reduce the software maintenance costs, the ongoing maintenance costs, and simplify those all down into a single monthly charge. Means that the expertise required inside your organisation is greatly reduced. And there are also always going to be some, I guess, edge cases where an on-premise deployment is required for reasons of flexibility. But we can also integrate the cloud-based components of this offering with an on-premise implementation if that's necessary for technical reasons. And we also think it makes sense to be, if I can say, talking to an organisation with experience in service delivery. So NTT delivers these services from Australia using an Australian operations centre and service desk, which for a lot of our government customers is really important. We can deliver them with a custom SLA and with proper project management and architectural support. Equally, we can deliver these services worldwide from the very broad footprint of NTT data centres, which covers basically the globe. So if any of this, I suppose, is of interest, if you'd like to continue this conversation, always happy to talk to you about the options for testing the capability as a proof of concept. Again, all the integration with Salesforce, all the integration with other software as a service applications is pre-existing, so we can stage these proof of concepts pretty quickly and show you some real world benefit as an example. I'm equally happy to look at it as a consulting opportunities to help you understand. As we saw in the Tesco example, they had, I think it was 43 different sources of identity inside their organisation, to try to help people understand where these systems are at the moment and see where there are opportunities for improvement. So obviously, I think there'll be contact details that come through as part of the webinar. Please reach out to me or reach out to Trevor, and we can happy to engage with around this.